got time for Bethel Ridge? Yeah, we could. Coming down the other side wouldn't be very fun. Yeah, it's not bad.
Hey, friends and neighbors. This is part 2 of the first day of my trip to South Dakota in 2022. This is just after I met up with Tim and Frank from OneOldManRiding. We're riding east on Highway 12.
I got a wide load. I don't want to do it on a corner either.
That isn't clouds or fog obscuring the sun hanging in the trees. It's actually smoke from nearby forest fires. Not too long before this, the road had actually been closed for a few days while they were fighting fires in this area. One thing I'll say about this old GS, she's got plenty of power. I can basically twist the throttle in any gear. She might grunt a little bit at first, but man, she'll just come alive and pull me forward. She's fully loaded here. We're going up a long, steady uphill. She never skipped a beat. Great bike for this kind of trip.
Damn, that temperature dropped. Woo! Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, it dropped 10 degrees. I stood up to stretch my leg and woo, man, that was chilly up there.
That might be a common theme in this series. I have to keep standing up to stretch my leg. My right knee and right hip are in absolute agony. I just cannot get the ergonomics of the bike set for myself.
On this bike? In a day, probably was on the CRF 250L coming back from Ellensburg, taking back roads. I don't know how many miles it was, but it was 7 hours to get home. Probably. The longest that I know the mileage of was our trip around Mount Rainier with Mark a couple weeks ago on this bike, and that was 330 some miles for me. Yeah, I think it was, yeah, I'd say so. It's 44, just over 4,400. Oh man, smell that smoke.
Eventually we come down off a White Pass,
Yeah, just gorgeous.
and here we're in the Yakima Valley. The temperature starts to rise,
man,
and the landscape really starts to change color. You'll notice this when you cross from western Washington into the central and eastern parts of Washington. It's quite a dramatic climate shift from more temperate to high desert. Here we've met up with Paco Pete, and we're making our way across the central part of Washington state. At this time of year, the scenery is only remarkable in how unremarkable it is. Just brown farmland. The road here is a straight black ribbon stretched out ahead of us, and the heat was radiating up from it. We weren't in any hurry to stick around on this part of the journey, so we just pushed the bikes faster through the haze of smoke that has settled across the area. This was as fast as I've ever ridden, for more than a few seconds at a time. In this last part, we've crossed into Idaho, and we're approaching Lewiston on Highway 95. The landscape here is more textured. No more of the flat, brown farmland. Unfortunately, I didn't record the rest of the way to Kamiah. We did stop in Orofino for dinner and had a wrong turn after that. Had a cool little detour on a back road, very curvy with lots of wildlife. We saw some deer and some wild turkey, but unfortunately it was getting late. Sun was starting to set, so we turned back to Orofino and got back on Highway 12 to finish our route to Kamiah, where we had a hotel for the night. The latter half of the day was hot. We were probably pretty ripe, so a welcome shower was there and a good night of sleep. Day one for me from Kingston, Washington to Kamiah, Idaho, about 513 miles if you include our little detour. It was a great day of riding.